Please note that ASMR True Crime Cold Cases has no intention of disturbing the peace of the victims or families that have endured the tragedies discussed on this episode. All opinions are my own unless stated otherwise, and all sources can be found at the end of this episode and in the description below. This is purely a tool to educate others on the cold cases that remain unsolved today. A single internet search of her name results in dozens of articles, videos, and memories left behind after that fateful night. Hi, I'm Cara Davis, and on tonight's episode of ASMR True Crime Cold Cases, we'll be discussing Rose Busch, Knoxville resident and jeweler's wife, who, over 50 years ago, was found tragically murdered in her own home. What happened to her on that fateful night? Who, out of the few people who were close to her, wanted to hurt her? And what became after it all? That's what we're going to look into tonight. Rose Busch, 64 at the time of her death, was the wife of 69-year-old jeweler and businessman Henry Busch. Rose, who had fled with her family in the early 1900s from Caesars, Russia, married Harry in 1924. Already a bright entrepreneur, Harry soon took sole ownership of a royal jeweler's chain in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was not only his business skills, but Rose's as well, that led the couple to quickly climbing the ladder of success and making a name for themselves. Rose, knowing what worked and what didn't in the business world, was always sharp and dedicated to doing things correctly. In fact, she and Harry had spent so much time in business that Rose never conceived, and the two never had a child. It was a chilly night on the 19th of November in 1968. Rose stood in her kitchen icing a cake that had just left the oven. The maid had left for the day at around 4 p.m., and the yard worker, 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲, was the only person besides Rose who was on the property. After declining a ride from Rose, William left the property, making sure to lock all the doors to the house and Rose's car, and left on foot for the nearest bus stop. Around 5:25 p.m., Rose received a call from her husband, who had been at United Loan, where he was currently working. After hanging up with Rose, Harry was quickly informed by the store manager, B.T. Barnett Jr., that his vehicle had a flat tire. It would be later found that the tire was intentionally flattened by an unknown person. Harry immediately called his wife again to inform her that he would be late. She hadn't answered. At 5:52 p.m., according to ADT records, Harry and his coworker left the office to have a mechanic fix the flat. After informing the mechanic where to go and giving all the information needed, Harry redialed his house. Once again, his wife did not answer. Figuring something was amiss, Harry was quickly driven home by his coworker. When he walked in the door, he was met with the unthinkable. Rose was found by Harry in the hallway that led from the carport to the kitchen. She had been lying on her back, drenched in blood. The autopsy later revealed that Rose suffered multiple blows to the head and knife stabs to her body, including a grazed bullet wound to the hand. The last of the wounds was a knife directly in her heart that had been thrusted with such force that the handle had broken off. Now the evidence is what really threw me in for a loop. So all the evidence collected included a pair of white bloodstained gloves, a Cleveland, Ohio blue police uniform coat, a yellow police raincoat, a police cap, fake police badges, 2 Ohio license tags stolen from a vehicle, a second pair of gloves, and a .22 caliber Ruger semi-automatic pistol. Also, with the pistol was a dented and broken off silencer, all of which was found in a bush on the right side of the road, apparently thrown from the passenger side of a vehicle. Blood samples came back to match Rose's type, but nothing else pointed towards a specific suspect. The only thing remotely worth being a clue was the silencer. Having been incorrectly screwed on, the police were led to believe that the killer was inexperienced and sloppy with his or her task. With all the evidence gathered, police were able to come to a theory as to how the murder took place. So in lieu of taking a risk of miscommunicating some information, this theory will come entirely quoted from Jim Bollock, a Knox News reporter. The police garb was used to induce Rose Busch, known to be a very cautious person, to open her carport door to someone who she thought was a police officer. The pistol was fired almost right away, just as she threw up her right hand, sustaining a wound there. The gun jammed on the first shot, and the killer subdued Rose Busch with multiple blows to the head from the gun and silencer. Blows so ferocious they fractured her skull, dented the silencer, and broke it off the gun barrel. All those blows were to the back of the, or the top of the head, indicating she had turned and tried to run away. Inside the Busch home, police had found one spent .22 caliber cartridge and one live round. The autopsy report describes the wound to Rose Busch's hand as being from a sliver of a bullet. The misaligned silencer would cause part of the bullet to sliver off as it lifted the barrel, said Watson. This may have been a hired killer, but it was not a professional killer. It was a botched job. The silencer was not even properly aligned with the barrel. Additionally, the detective said the killer used a type .22 caliber cartridge that would not cycle through the Ruger semi-automatic pistol. The killer grabbed a small paring knife from Rose Busch's own kitchen to complete the crime. The broken handle was wrapped in white tape, which she used to mark her kosher utensils. Later investigation revealed that nothing had been stolen from the home except for Rose's wedding ring. This and the extreme planning clearly displayed by the killer all pointed to a contract killer. Eventually and inevitably, Harry was suspected of killing his own wife. It had been quite known that he was keen to spend time with the town's infamous playgirl, Hazel Davidson. It was suspected that Harry killed his wife to finally marry Hazel. However, this was eventually debunked when he married a New York widow, Sadie Tish, and moved to Florida. 6 months after the murder, Harry passed a polygraph test, having to wait until he was off his heart medication. Now, Hazel herself was also suspected. She was suspected because Harry had pointed her out. He had claimed Hazel had made comments about keeping tabs on Rose's movements. And to top it all off, she refused to take a polygraph test and was never fully off the radar. Other suspects included a gang in Ohio who oftentimes dressed as police officers to commit robberies, and multiple Ohio residents who had all at one point or another owned the gun used in Rose's murder. None, unfortunately, ever showed any signs of promise. It has been a little over 50 years now since Rose Busch died in her home that tragic night. To most, she was a beautiful, successful businesswoman, but to one, she was a target, a victim. In all this time, no leads have pointed investigators in any direction towards finding Rose's killer, and to this day, the case still remains cold. I'm Cara Davis, and this has been ASMR True Crime, Cold Cases.